So how about those Washington football teamers? Again, I was joking on my podcast. Do they still not have a name? How is it taking them this long to come up with a name? I don't know if they're ever going to get a name. If you're not, that's cool, but just announce that then. Say, no, we're the football team. That's what we do. Very bizarre stuff. Anyways, talking about the draft, though, for a second. So they start things off with Jamon Davis, which is a surprise. I did not have him as a top five linebacker on my list, although I did like him. I have him as kind of a sort of I thought he would be a good like second round guy to get, but getting him this early was a bit surprising. I had Xavier Collins ahead of him, who did go ahead, but I also had a couple other guys who went later ahead of him as well. There's stuff to like here. He ran a 4.47, which is probably closer to a 4.57, but still, that's a good 40 time for a linebacker. Although he is a bit undersized at 206 pounds, he's also 6'3, so kind of the skinnier guy, which is interesting, very interesting. He's not necessarily the best tackler, which is maybe a bit of a concern, and I do feel like he can get blocked away a little bit, which gives me a little bit of concern because you've got the smaller size. He's not the best tackler. There's issues there. I can see a bust factor, but he does play coverage very well. And when he makes a good read, he can get there quickly, which he makes pretty good reads. So he's kind of a smart player. And again, has pretty good speed, just a little bit undersized, which is the concern. So I'm not quite sure if I would have gone with him at 19, but at the same time, they need a linebacker. And if they like him, who am I to say that Ron Rivera doesn't know what he's talking about? Because clearly he does. So they get the sort of high ceiling, low floor type guy, which sometimes teams don't like to do that. Sometimes teams like to do that. But hey, a boom or bust pick isn't the worst thing in the world, because when it booms, then you're really good. So I don't hate it. It's just not what I would have done. It's kind of one of those, I get the logic, so I'm not going to be mad at it, although I would have done something differently. But a lot of times I say I would do something differently, and there's a reason why the NFL team did what they did. So there you go. In the second round, they get Samuel Cosmi, which I don't actually know if they need a left tackle, even though I think a lot of people have said that they do, because I thought Cornelius Lucas looked pretty solid when he played there. So, there is that in the 600 snaps he played. Morgan Moses obviously is really good. And maybe they're just saying, let's get another guy in the room and really make this offensive line great, because it's pretty good right now. I mean, you have Rollier, who's a Rollier, not sure how you pronounce it, but he's good. For the number 73 for the Washington football team, the center. They got a couple of good guards. Obviously, Sheriff is a monster, and a Morgan Moses. No one has any critiques about him. So maybe if they really like Cosmi, they can say, hey, let's complete this offensive line and be great, because kind of the one position that there is question marks is the most important position on the line, the left tackle. So getting a guy in Cosmi, who some people love, some people had as a first-round talent. So getting him sort of later in the second, I see the logic behind. They then went out and got Benjamin St. Just, not sure exactly how you pronounce it, the cornerback from Minnesota. I'm not sure if they needed a cornerback, but they could use another guy in the room. So, they went out and got William Jackson, who I like a lot. They still have Kendall Fuller. And then they have guys like Darrell Roberts and Jimmy Moreland. So maybe just the hope is that he can sort of compete with those guys for the third corner role. Or maybe they think he's a good special teamer. I don't know, but third round is a bit high for special teams, especially 74th overall. So that was a bit of a head scratcher, not a massive one, though. And then they really made up for it, though, by a few picks later getting Dyami Brown, who I think is a steal. He made my top 10 wide receiver list. I know Chris Sims is crazy about him. Chris Sims has him as like his number 3 wide receiver, which I think is a bit crazy, because my issue with Brown is you see a lot of the way that he won was kind of with his speed down the field, running go routes, beating sort of these slower corners. And those just won't work in the NFL the way that they did in college, because he isn't as fast, and he isn't fast enough to consistently win that way in the NFL, because NFL corners are faster. So there is that, but he has really good footwork. So I really do think that I like a lot of getting him here. I think that he was, to me, it wouldn't have been crazy if you drafted him like early in the second round. So getting him, honestly, you can make an argument it wouldn't be crazy getting him in the first round, although that's a bit tough. I think second round makes a lot more sense. And they got him in the third. So you got to love that pick. Really good value. Huge fan of Dyami Brown here. So then what Washington did was they got John Bates in the fourth, who's kind of a speedy tight end who's big too, 6'5", 250. So the hope is he can block and kind of be more of a complete wide receiver to, Logan Thomas, who is a really good pass catching, not wide receiver, tight end. So that seems like that's the logic there. Usually when you have a really good like receiving tight end, what you want is kind of more of a complete tight end, which I understand with Bates. And then they got Darek Forrest, not Derek. Maybe it's pronounced Derek. I don't know. Kind of weirdly spelled though, with the A instead of the E. However, he's someone who, again, they need a safety. So just getting another guy in the room, I understand the logic behind. I don't know too much about him. I have not been studying hours and hours of Derek or Derek, however you pronounce it, Forrest his name, or game, excuse me, not name. But there's still logic just in getting a position of need. So I get that. In the sixth round, the steal of the draft, Cameron Cheeseman, just because of the name. Again, love a good name at this point in the draft. The Cheeseman has gone off the board. He's a long snapper. I don't know. I'm not a long snapper expert. They value long snapper enough to spend a sixth round pick on him. Okay, fine. I think that's a bit high, but at the same time, if you have a long snapper who screws up a snap, that could honestly cost you a game depending on the situation. So it seems a little bit surprising, but there you go. They also get a couple of depth edge guys in the seventh round with William Bradley King and Shaika Toney. So it's interesting. It seems like they're kind of two opposite guys, or Toney seems like kind of more of a speed type guy, whereas King is he's going to rely a little bit on size, being 252 pounds. So Toney ran a 4.55 40, but again, keep in mind that's the pro day 40, so I don't know how quick that actually is. He's a bit smaller at 242, 6'2", but so intrigue there, maybe some depth, because obviously they don't need starters with Sweat and Chase Young. They then got Dax Milne, who was best known for, taking passes from Zach Wilson. So there's some interesting stuff there, just because, a lot of people have seen his tape just out of nature of watching Zach Wilson tape. Although a lot of, let's be honest, Zach Wilson, pretty accurate down the field. That's a lot of where his stats came from. Had over 1,000 yards. So maybe a little bit of depth there in the wide receiving room. But if we're being honest, he seems like a special teams guy. That's typically what you're doing here. Obviously, Washington values special teams, getting a long snapper in the sixth. So getting a guy, he ran a 4.56, which isn't the best for for a guy if you want him to be like a gunner, which, fun fact, actually the 40-yard dash originated because they wanted to measure how good a gunner would be. That's kind of crazy to think about, because obviously no one really cares about it now, but that's because if you think about it, that's kind of the one time in football you run about 40 yards in a straight line when you're a gunner. So fun fact of the day, I guess. But yeah, so interesting draft from Washington for sure. A little bit of reaches. I thought really the Jamon Davis was a bit of a reach, it felt like. But the Cosme one, I'm not sure if they needed, but I understand the logic behind. So some question mark picks, but I think the one that they really hit out of the park was Dyami Brown. And that's kind of why this could have gone from a sort of a below average draft to, I think, actually maybe even an above average draft, just because of what Dyami Brown brings to the table. So, and again, there's a lot to like about Davis, and I think he'll fit that scheme really well, which is what Ron Rivera wants. So that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.